It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andi Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pure Performance. My name is Brian Wilson, and as always, I have with me my co-host and special guest today, who's making head gestures. He's not mimicking my talking, but he's turning his head and being fun. Andi Grabner. Ladies and gentlemen, a guy you probably never heard much before, but here he is. I'd like to introduce you. Andi, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself today?
Well, thank you, Brian, so much for having me. And for those people that don't know me, most likely because they've never listened to this podcast before, my name is Andi Grabner, and I think we were hoping for different guests, but this is just our fallback that we just interview each other.
Yes.
Maybe that's
we do have a
way.
bunch of guests lined up, but we were going to have a gap if we don't do something like this. So
exactly.
But Andi's always, a world traveler, talks to a lot of people. So for the listeners who don't know, Andi's always getting our guests. He's the brain trust behind this podcast, right? Not only is he really smart on all the topics, but he also is very well connected and meets tons of people at all the conferences he goes to. So he gets to bring in a lot of people to the show that we love talking to. But also, one thing not to overlook, Andi, is the fact that you are going to all these conferences. You do talk to all these people. So you get a bunch of information and knowledge just from those. And one of the reasons why I like when I just talk to you is that we get to just talk about what you've learned from that.
Yeah.
But before we go into what you learned, coincidentally, something really big happened today. Really,
there's something scary happened, even like perfect for a Halloween episode, because if you look at the picture at our thumbnail, we try to be scary. And what happened this morning? So today is
about
October.
As scary as we are funny.
Yeah, October 20th, 11 days before Halloween. The world stood still, or at least AWS US-East stood still for a couple of hours. Brian, I hope you were still sleeping because it was in the early morning hours. Yeah,
I was hoping it would still be out. When I saw some stuff on my Blue Sky feed, I was hoping to see that it was still out or something, because then it'd be like, oh, I guess I can't work today, but didn't get so lucky. But again, I guess I get to talk to you because we don't know what's on AWS.
Yeah, true. And I think the reason why I wanted to bring it up, obviously, this is no finger pointing. It's really, if these situations happen, whoever is responsible for any type of cloud and shared service, I'm sure they didn't have a lovely night. The folks that had to. Well, I don't know yet. But what I wanted to say is, I think a couple of things. It shows us how dependent we are, obviously, on shared infrastructure. And how important it is to think about resiliency from multiple angles. I think this is also why people think about multi-regional. This is maybe why people also think about multi-cloud, because what if one of your clouds that normally never goes down, but if it goes down, then what is your contingency plan? What's your plan B? Mm-hmm. And also one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up, last week I was in Estonia, in Tallinn, and I was presenting at a meetup, and I talked a lot about platform engineering, but the discussion obviously came out about observability, and I talked a little bit about Dynatrace and how we do observability, and that we are providing Dynatrace as a SaaS service. And then somebody asked me in the audience, so how do you monitor Dynatrace? I said, well, we use Dynatrace to also monitor Dynatrace. And then he said, how do you monitor this Dynatrace? Because if Dynatrace goes down, how do you do this, right? And it was a really good, fair question. Now, obviously, we have Dynatrace deployed in different regions, also across different cloud vendors. So that means the idea is, and this is also true for our customers, right? You can obviously monitor and set up different tenants in different regions to make sure that you are not flying blind. Nevertheless, I also want to be honest, and I think many of the SaaS software vendors today were impacted because US-East runs a lot of critical services. I know we are using a ticketing like Asana internally in my team for ticketing that was down. Mm-hmm. We are using Restream as a recording facility tool, a recording tool for videos that was also impacted. So it had a big impact. And I think many, also Docker had issues and everything. So it's just an interesting reminder that that these shared services are critical infrastructure, but we still need to make sure that we have a plan on how to deal with it when these things don't work as expected. Yeah.
Right. And not to go into the geopolitical side of it, like we're not going to dive deep, but it also just points out how reliant we are on this. And obviously there's a lot going on, geopolitically, wars breaking out everywhere and everything. And you think about all right, if someone maliciously takes down one or more of these things, everything comes to a standstill, right? Yeah. Everything. I remember, we had a blackout. After Hurricane Sandy, years and years ago on the East Coast, we didn't have power. It's you can't even really pump gas without power unless you bring in a backup generator, but then you need gas for that, right? So everything is reliant on what you'd call these utilities, right? Yeah. It'd be like power, water, internet. The other thing too is not to get crazy, but what if one of these providers decides to start holding their data centers hostage? We're going to turn it off unless we get the James Bond stuff, but we don't need to go down that side. But again, it's if you're not divested and spread across multiple components, like the idea you mentioned, how do you monitor Dynatrace? Okay, well, we use Dynatrace to monitor Dynatrace. And then you can keep asking on and on. Well, how do you monitor the monitor that's monitoring Dynatrace? And obviously there's a set limit to that. But if all your monitors are in either one zone or one cloud provider, that defeats it. So, I think it is a really great reminder that it has to be spread out. Depending on how critical your services are, it is a huge risk. Maybe the video recording service going down, for a few hours, that's not going to impact anybody, but for definitely for critical internet infrastructure components, it's huge.
And even for non-critical, so a fun story on the whole thing. I went to Vienna today because I had meetings in our office in Vienna. And on the way there, I arrived just shortly before lunch. And I walked down to my favorite fast food place, Austrian fast food. It's called Leberkas Pepi. So for everybody that's listening that knows Leberkas. And so I got my Leberkas semmel. And then I'm also on the loyalty program. So that means I have an app where you can then scan the receipt and then you get points. And it didn't work. And it just said, system is currently down. Now, I'm just making assumptions, but it could very well be that the backend system that powers the loyalty program of that local fast food restaurant, runs their backend services on AWS as well. Who knows?
Right, but at least the payment service wasn't down.
The payment service was not down, and I still have the printed copy of my receipt here.
Because you want your points.
Because I want my points, and I want to scan it later on once the service is up and running.
What do you get when you have enough points?
You can get discount on food. Right? You get
what's your main, just in case anybody listening happens to run into you and there's one of these stores nearby and they wanted to get you a treat. What is your go-to?
It's a Leberkas semmel. So it's basically Leberkas with cheese in there.
What's Leberkas?
And it's what's Leberkas? I'll send a link over for everybody that is listening to this. I will definitely send a link to Leberkas Pepi. That's the local. It's an institution here in Linz and also in other parts of the country. But enough about Leberkas now, even though it just makes me hungry again.
So, right, but again, this is like if hopefully we never see it, but if Azure and AWS and GCP have outages simultaneously, obviously you can only prepare for so much. Right, there's there is a limitation. There's a cost, whatever benefit. But again, when you have those critical systems, right? You would almost think maybe some of these places should also have like an on-prem backup, right? I'm thinking like hospitals or fire and police systems, right? You don't want to just have it in the cloud because if there is a whatever you know what I'm saying. It is kind of scary when this happens. I haven't seen an outage. Well, I didn't see that outage, but I haven't heard about an outage like this in a long time, right? I think, many years ago there was one with Cloudflare. Is Cloudflare the one with the... So.
Yeah. So, but to talk about how do we start about this? And obviously, this was an event today. But you said I've been fortunate enough to travel. I was very fortunate enough to be one of the hosts of Cloud Native Days Austria. So it was 2 weeks ago in Vienna. And first of all, thanks again for everyone in the organizer team, many people behind the scenes that are doing a lot of work. We had a lot of volunteers that helped. It was a 2-day conference in a cinema in Vienna with 2 auditoriums, a lot of helping hands, and also a lot of great speakers. And I got to say, for me, we had, and this is kind of like a little bit pitch to the next podcast episode, we had Laura Taco from GetDX as a keynote speaker, and she talked about developer experience. For me, the most interesting takeaway, she had a slide, and I'm pretty sure I will definitely ask her in the podcast that we record later. She talked about, the impact of AI on developer experience, but then she brought a slide that showed what are the top time-consuming tasks that we have as engineers. And Brian, take a guess. What do you think the number one most time-consuming task is of an engineer?
Debugging.
No, even non-technical. What do you think? Where do we spend most of our
commuting to an office?
What happened? Almost there. I give you a third chance now. What else do we do while we're working that it does not related to writing or debugging code or testing code?
You've stumped me. Thinking? No, that doesn't make sense.
What do you see most when you look at your calendar?
Oh, meetings. Yes.
Meetings, yeah. Meetings. So,
but if you're not having meetings, it doesn't look like you're productive. So it's a corporate must.
Yeah. But I mean, her point that she wanted to make, right, there's many different things that make us unproductive or less productive, and meetings seem to be the number one time consumer. And so her question to the audience was, if you're thinking about vibe coding and using AI in the IDE, of course, that will give a productivity boost or enhancement. But are you really focusing on those tasks that are currently consuming the most of your time? And you may not thought about where we may not even know where most of your time is spent. So I thought this was a really interesting takeaway from this meeting, and that's why I'm really happy that we have her. She will talk about the DX Core 4 metrics. I think we had Dusan from the Czech Republic a couple of months ago, also on that topic, because they have been trying to adopt that DX Core 4 framework, and now we have her. She's the CTO from GetDX, and she has a lot of good insights into how organizations measure and improve developer experience and developer efficiency.
Yeah, I think it's also too, obviously meetings take up a lot of time, but every time I've either, dabbled a little bit in coding, or even if I'm mixing music and stuff, having an interruption is just like a huge productivity killer. So I'll bring this up with Laura, obviously, but the idea of like, okay, if there are going to be meetings, they should probably be all stacked together at the beginning or end of the day. Or even right in the middle, but put them all together. This way, like once you're a developer and you're working, you could just keep chugging along because your brain's going to be on that different wavelength. But very interesting. I look forward to having that conversation. We haven't had a DX podcast in quite a long time at this point.
I remember we had Dusan on because I met him in Prague earlier this year, and then we talked a little bit about it. But you're right, it's been a while. Yeah. And then the other two things that I wanted to quickly highlight on that conference, the other two keynote speakers. One was actually it was David Pavlik. I met him also in Prague, and I was then invited to go back to him on site to his company and talk about observability. But he had a keynote in Vienna that I saw that he delivered at an engineering leadership conference in Prague earlier this year. He talked about his life and his life opportunities that he had, because he started his early career at Microsoft, and then he basically raised his hand when the opportunity came up to say, I would like to go to the US. And then he kind of explained how he went from Microsoft to Amazon to Netflix to SpaceX. And then like he showed all of his kind of paths in his career, and always what triggered that opportunity and why he took it. But in the beginning, and this was kind of for me the key lesson to take away, is it started with raising his hand, because the message was, if you don't raise your hand that you want to do something, that you have a certain skill, maybe people around you don't recognize it and put you in that position to take this opportunity, you need to be the one that raises the hand and make people aware. Hey, I think I should do this. I want to do this. I want to step up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Andy. You and I have gotten, pretty far in our careers, and I think it's because two things. Number one is we raised our hand and looked to do things that, looked fun and interesting, right? I mean, it's not like we were raising our hand like, hey, the bathroom needs to be clean. Yeah, I'll do it, right? It's now this is something fun and interesting, and I want to learn about it. So you do let your intent be known so that people will be thinking about you. But the flip side of what you got to do as well, and this is a lot harder for people like me and probably a lot of people who are developers, right, is to have some level of self-promotion to make sure people are aware of the things that you're doing with, you don't want to be bragging about it and saying, look at all this awesome stuff I've done, but you want to share it, as we see all over the place in the IT community, share your knowledge, help other people out, because then you just become known as a person who's got a lot of knowledge, so that when others are thinking, hey, who should we get for this? Even if you haven't raised your hand yet, they might be turning to you because they know you're, really smart and you do all these really cool things. So that's actually, we haven't really had, and I don't know if it would really fit in the podcast, but I'm sure there are other ones like how to advance in what you want to do in your IT career from that soft skills level, right? How do you let it be known, right? But and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's very interesting. There's those two sides: raise your hand, but also don't just be quiet and sit in the back. Yeah, it's fantastic. You do great work, but people have to know about it, right?
Yeah, and the cool thing at the same conference at Cloud Native Days Austria, we had a last-minute dropout of a speaker. So on day one, we announced, hey, if anybody in the room wants to take this opportunity, 10-minute lightning talk on day number 2, raise your hand and let us know, right? And I wasn't really sure if we get any feedback, but also the first keynote speaker we had on that day, which is the third keynote speaker, Ali Malochi, he also had a really interesting life story. Refugee. He grew up as a kid in the beginning, the early days. They fled from Iran to Austria, was in a refugee camp. And a very interesting upbringing. But in the end, kind of a couple of messages where you also need to kind of, don't just sit there. And he said, he looked into the audience and he said, most of you are just sitting there and just consuming. The one that is next to you that will not just consume, but decides today to stand up and talk with more people, make more connections, and starts sharing what they have learned with others, they will in the end be more successful, in more experiences, in more connections. And this was really, really, really great what he said. And I think because of him and because we repeated this whole, raise your hand and try, take a risk, we had 7 people on day one from the audience that gave us a suggestion what they want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, we actually put them all up and let people vote. And then we took the number one highly voted one from. So basically the audience decided what new session that they wanted to hear the next day. And it was really great to have one guy. He was raising his hand and he got picked by the audience because they wanted to learn something from him.
Right, that's amazing. And that also speaks to the other side. Who's the name of the person you said who came over?
Ali Mahochi. He was the opening keynote speaker. He's a known entity in Austria because of his background and what he's done in Austria. Especially, he's now a UNICEF youth ambassador. Oh, wow. His mission really is to encourage the next generation of people, not just IT, but people to understand what opportunities are out there for them. I think even was it Times Magazine or something, not Times, another big outlet, they said Ali is preparing the next generation for jobs that do not yet exist because he has a platform, he created a platform back in the days. It's called What Ya Do, which kind of like translated like what do you do? He created a platform with live stories where he interviewed people around the world about what do they actually do. So that because he said when he was an immigrant and he came to Austria and when he talks with people, they don't often know what is even possible, right? They only know, right? Yeah, I can become a cleaner, I can become XYZ, but they don't even know what's possible. And sometimes their background and the people around them also don't tell them or just hold them back and say, be safe and do XYZ, right?
Right.
So really.
Well, I think the other really, really important thing there is that, everyone's got a job, not everyone, but let's assume everyone's got a job, right? May not be exactly what, I wanted to play drums in a band. I'm doing this, right? It's not what I wanted to do necessarily as a kid, right? But if you just do the job you're supposed to show up for, you're not going to find any joy in it. You're not going to find any, you're going to be bored. You're going to be like, this sucks, right? It's doing these other things. It's raising your hand. It's even just making the connections and talking to people. Like, having people you can talk to and colleagues that you can share ideas with makes your job so much more interesting, fun, and invest your mental health better into it, because you're not just sitting there pushing buttons anymore. You're having stimulating conversations. You're getting to know other people. So I think, all around, that's really, really fantastic advice, and it's awesome what Andi is doing.
Yeah, I will make sure to post the link, because all the keynotes were recorded, and I think by the time this session airs, the recording to his keynote will also be available. Really great stuff. And the last thing that I remember from him, he also said, he talks to a lot of people that tell other people, what they should do and should not do. And he said, like what you said, right? Find something that excites you and follow that path. And he also, and this is the quote that I'm assigning to him. So in his closing statement, he said, "You are unique. Stay unique. Don't become a copy of somebody else." Because he was also talking about, how we are now with AI, right? We can just easily generate stuff, but in the end, we're just copying things. We're not really, we are not unique anymore. And so he always said, "You are unique. Stay unique. Don't become a copy of somebody else by mimicking somebody else or using tools that just replicate things. Right. Become creative in what you're passionate about." Yeah, and raise your hand.
Very good.
Yeah. Cool. And then I also wanted to quickly highlight one of the topics that I learned in Gdansk. I was in Gdansk in Poland, and I did an observability meetup, and I was talking about how to analyze logs and traces. I kind of showed a little bit on, kind of my career in the space and how long I've been analyzing traces. And then, Brian, I'm not sure about you, but for me, it's always a surprise, because we've been living in this trace bubble for so long at Dynatrace. Yeah. We've always done traces. When
it's in the name.
It's in the name, yeah. And it's always surprising then when you realize that in the bigger, community, in the developer community, traces are still a very new thing, and not many people are familiar with traces and how traces should be and what a good trace can be and what it actually can do. I'm not sure what you see in your work.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've been living in that bubble for a long time as well. As you know, I was a customer of Dynatrace before I started. I think that was around 2009 or something. I started using it was whatever Dynatrace 3.5 was, right? Whenever that one came out, or back then. Well, now we call it Atmon, but yeah, So I was relying mostly on metrics back then. I didn't really have access to logs. That probably would help. I was doing performance testing, but I know the traces were just groundbreaking, especially because we had the auto instrumentation piece going on, or anyway, I don't need to get nostalgic about the old days of the Atmon product. But to me, yeah, it's so many people are comfortable with logs. But when you ask them, what's that process like? They're like, well, it's kind of a pain, but I know how to navigate it. I was shocked when I saw your notes here that people still don't know quite a lot about traces, right? Again, we have been doing it for forever. The industry's been doing it for forever. The one thing I was thinking about, obviously you didn't say people don't see the benefit of traces. But if you're going to get somebody to go from a log to a trace, right? And I'm not trying to sell anything here, right? But again, the benefit of a trace over a log is logs you got to store, right? And depending on what tool you're using, That can cost a lot of money. If you need to go back, you might have to take some time to dehydrate them and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's only going to show you what's written in the log, right? Sure, if you have an exception, it'll be written there. You can see an exception in a trace. Granted, that's kind of on par, right? But you're not going to have the context outside of that. But the one thing that this made me think about was, as the observability world is trying to nudge people into traces because they're more context rich, right, and more detail oriented. The danger is a lot of people are going to OpenTelemetry, and the default OpenTelemetry tracers, right, the ones you automatically put in your code, they're just going to basically pick up the entry point and the exit point, and everything in between is still going to be not seen. Platforms like ours, I'm sure many of our competitors do it as well, are using other bits of technology to capture the methods in between, so you have that fuller context. So I can understand the argument that traces might not be as valuable, but it's only because it's like rudimentary tracing. Now, again, this is not a knock against OTel, because OTel was designed to be used deeper than the default. The default is to get you started, to get something in there, right? And then the idea being, go ahead and add the OTel instrumentation to your critical code. The idea of the third parties adding that automatically to their code. We're seeing a lot of that in the LLM world with OpenTelemetry. I don't know, is OTel doing something like the snapshots to capture?
It's profiling. Profiling is coming. Yeah. I mean, profiling is already available for Java, and if I'm not mistaken, maybe also they're working on .NET already. So something that we've been doing for the last 10 years, I think now, we call it snapshots, right? Where we basically take stack trace information and then weave it into the traces. But yeah, to your point, so OpenTelemetry is getting there. But it's interesting, and I agree with your observation. The default traces that just come out of OpenTelemetry, if you don't spend the additional time to also instrument your code a little bit more, it lacks typically context because it focuses on incoming and outgoing requests and maybe some very critical libraries that are already pre-instrumented. Yeah, but they're getting there.
Yeah, at least but I can also see too, right? If your organization didn't want to put the money or investment into an observability platform, you were stuck with the logs. You've been using it for forever. So even though it's kind of a pain, you probably have all your little queries or maybe sed commands, or if you're using a tool, know how to use it. And then if you're finally getting around to it and you're just using the rudimentary OTel, you might be like, well, what is this, right? It's funny though, because we've been, even working in and using tools like Dynatrace. What's the one Mercury had, or HP Mercury? They had that one even before. It's not like the traces and stuff haven't been around for a long, long time. But as we've seen over time, it's been this growing push, even in the beginning of our performance careers, getting to people to even care about performance in the first place, right? It seemed like more of a luxury item. Now it's really on top of everyone's minds, finally. But there's still, I guess, that lag of what's all possible. And if you haven't been exposed to good traces, or just haven't even had the tools that can provide them. So yeah, it's really I'm really glad to hear that OpenTelemetry is adding profiling in, because again, that's a critical component of it. Yeah,
and also I think big kudos to everyone in the OpenTelemetry community who is educating. I think education is just the key thing. Educating, creating tutorials, videos. It's very important. Cool. Yeah,
so where did you go next, Andy, on your travels?
After Gdansk, I was in Tallinn, in Estonia. Yeah. And I gotta say, first of all, a funny, interesting thing for me, Tallinn,
Where's the first.
Tallinn is the capital of Estonia. Estonia is part of the 3 Baltic countries. So Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. And, that's right. And for me, it's just a fun fact. I think it's the only capital that I know where you can walk from the city center to the international airport. So I actually walked from my hotel to the airport because it's like a 40-minute walk. Nice. And it was a beautiful day. So it's actually, just wanted to highlight this. Kudos to the Estonians. But yeah, I had a platform engineering meetup there, and I gotta say it was funny when I arrived on the first day with an office. I met the people, and they were all telling me we had an internal meeting first, and they were all telling me, don't expect Estonians to be very, very outward, like very like talkative, and they will, they're very reserved. But I typically hear this with many countries. They think from themselves they're very closed and then like very hard to approach. And then we had the meetup the next day in our office, and I did a quick question in the beginning, like who was actually born in Estonia and who is from remote. And I got to say, a large group was from different countries. We had Azerbaijanians, we had people from India, from all over the place, really all over. But what I noticed is that the questions that I got were very critical, or let's say they're very, very to the point, like very direct. And because I mentioned a couple of things, and then they were asking, "This doesn't make sense, right? Can you, this doesn't make sense the way you explain it." And then we got into some arguments, even not arguments, but it was a longer discussion. Heated debates, yeah, which was really good, but it was unexpected, right? It was unexpected. Very smart people, very, very technical, very secure and resiliency aware. And yeah, I didn't know, for instance, that Bolt, the e-scooter and the car rental company, like the Uber equivalent, is from there, and many other, startups. In IT, I think they have the highest number of startups per capita in the world behind Israel, Estonia. Wow. So it's a really it's a high-tech spot there. Really cool.
Yeah, I had so for full transparency, my mother's mother is Lithuanian. But I was buying a piece of music gear that I think I found it on whatever it was, but it was manufactured in Lithuania. And I was like, oh, wow. I had, and this isn't to knock anything about that region, but like it just never comes up in anything. Yeah. And then I've seen since, like there's more, gear products coming out from that area and all. It's like, oh, okay, there's a lot going on there. And as you're saying, they've got, a lot of, I didn't no idea they had all these startups going on there. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. Yeah. But it's always interesting once you live long enough to see different areas of the world pop up, becoming more center stage, and other ones falling back a little bit more, or taking a back seat.
Obviously, I mean, it's obviously also a little bit of a bubbled view, because the reason why we talk about this now, because I was fortunate enough to travel there, and now it comes up, and I'm sure then you're more receptive to stories like you with Lithuania, right? Maybe you would have been able to see it, but you didn't have kind of any connection to it. And once you found out about your the mother of your mother, right, the grandmother, I mean, it's like then things all of a sudden become more visible.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So, and I just wanted to say thank you so much, everyone that I was able to meet in those cities, in those events. Thank you so much for the hospitality, for the good conversations, and hopefully there was at least one or two things that I could help people with inspiration of new thoughts and sharing some of the stuff that I've learned. Let's say it that way.
Yeah. You don't share stuff that you learn at all, though. So. That's my sarcasm. No, it's awesome. I always get jealous about how much you get to travel and meet all these. But again, that's going back to Ali, right? It's travel around and meet and experience all this stuff. Anyhow, so what's up next then? What was up next?
Yeah, what's up next? Up next is a little tour that I would like to promote. Henrik, our dear friend, I've invited him to also be part of today's podcast.
In quite a long time. Hi, Henrik.
Yeah, I tried to make him also come today, but he's on site with a customer right now traveling. And he and I, we go on a little tour in the US. We're both at KubeCon in Atlanta. So folks, if you're listening in, we'll be in Atlanta, obviously doing KubeCon and Cloud Native Con and all the co-located events. But then Henrik is traveling to the US a week prior, and I will be staying a week longer. And together we are doing a couple of cities where we're doing meetups and events. I'll post a link also in the description. I think Henrik is doing Chicago, Cincinnati, Dallas. Together we'll be doing Atlanta. So we're doing a Dynatrace event in Atlanta. And then the week after, I will be doing Omaha, Minneapolis, and Boston. So it would be great to meet some of you. It's open events. So that's why I just, I'll send the links. But it will be nice. Especially,
Nice.
yeah, especially the topics, right? Henrik will cover a lot around open telemetry and cloud native Kubernetes. That is his world. And I'll try to talk about platform engineering and stuff that I see, how AI can help. But also, I think I learned a lot where we also want to be a little bit cautious. Not everything needs the AI sledgehammer. There are certain things that can be solved with simpler and more cost efficient and more deterministic solutions. But AI is obviously here to stay, and we need to just figure out how to best leverage it in our day-to-day life.
Right. Well, I also can't wait to hear what you come up with some of the AI native stuff. I was talking with my my neighbor who's got a small startup AI company, and I brought up the topic with him, and he was telling me how they started building from the ground up. Like again, he said they were AI native, right? But again, as we know, there's no full definition of AI native. But what he was clarifying from that was that they weren't thinking about, I forget how he put it, but basically they considered AI about everything because it was going to be an AI platform. So it was more about what do we need to accomplish? Now let's go back and find what we need to use to build that. Right. So it wasn't this, it wasn't the lift and shift to the cloud, right? Or lift and shift to AI. It was a brand new thing. So they got to really think about it strongly beforehand and try to take into all that kind of stuff into consideration. But obviously this is still a burgeoning topic. So I'm really looking forward to either some guests we can pull in about AI native or anything you might have learned from that bit, as well as, what's going on in cloud native.
Well, talking about guests, also we will have Pino Resnik, hopefully I pronounce his name correctly. He will be back because his AI native book has been published, I think 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and he's coming back in November on a pure performance episode. Yeah.
One last thing I was thinking of, just as you were talking about doing the tour, if we had a bigger podcast, I don't know if you ever seen like these really big podcasts, usually they're like comedy ones or whatever, but they'll go doing like tours around the country, recording live podcasts in theaters and stuff. Like, we got a bigger podcast, Andy. We could do a tour. Hey, everyone, get your friends to listen to us.
Yeah. I'm comfortable.
To listen to us.
Yeah, I'm gotta say I'm comfortable with the setup that we have right now. But who knows, right? Definitely, we'll see. All right. Maybe the last thing I wanted to quickly scratch upon because we just talked about the AI native book. Some of you may have followed some of the postings that I did. Last year, we published a book on platform engineering. So it was called Platform Engineering for Architects.
I can see it
together with Max. Yeah, you got it here? Yeah. Did you read it?
Yes.
Let's
skim through it. Every once in a while, if I pick it up, I'm like, oh, let me take a look at some. Oh, that one looks interesting.
Some pictures.
I haven't read it, front and back.
That's fine. But so after this book, right, I thought I'm done with writing a book. But then Hillary, the one of my co-authors from the first book, she said she would love to do another one. And we got in touch with the publisher, and they had the idea to talk about modern observability for cloud native and AI. So like kind of AI ops. What is it really like now in the era of cloud native and AI? So how can AI benefit observability? What are the use cases? What does modern observability even look like in the cloud native and in the AI native world? And so we've been starting to write a couple of chapters and have also a third author, not Max this time because he couldn't do it, but we have Rob or Rob Ratti, who is with us, that Hillary knew from her past life. And looking forward to that. It's been an interesting journey again. A lot of learnings, a lot of time spent in writing, but good.
Let me ask you, when you talk about AI ops, I see that thrown around, and I'm sure our listeners hear that a lot. Are you speaking from the point of view of how do we observe AI platforms, or are you talking in the point of view, how do we incorporate AI into our observability platforms to make them more efficient, more powerful?
Yeah, I would say more the latter. And I think the way I start chapter one, I think Gartner coined the term AI Ops 10 years ago, right? And AI Ops 10 years ago was all about using some machine learning and then basically denoise all of the different events from different separated tools, right? This was the time of the MookSofts of the world. I'm sure they're still around, but you collect a lot of different pieces of data, and then there's so much noise, and you try to use some type of algorithm, some type of machine learning to denoise, to make your operations more efficient. And I think this was one of the initial definitions from Gartner. And we are trying to say, kind of 10 years later, what's the world? What is modern observability? And really, do we have better ways than just denoising? How can we enrich observability data from the beginning with more context? This is where standards like OpenTelemetry come in, where the semantic dictionary come in. So instead of having multiple separate data silos and event generators, we try to enrich the data at the source with enough context, connecting logs, metrics, and traces, and our profiles, and real user data and whatever else. And then use modern algorithms to make sense of this data, so that optimizing the work of a human when it comes to detecting anomalies, finding root causes. This is obviously stuff where I bring in some of my background from the work that we do here at Dynatrace. But the book, we write it in an independent, right, thought leadership way. So everything we write there is meant to be just best practices that we've seen out there. How you would implement observability, the challenges that come with it, and then obviously AI has a big part of it. But we are also very critical, and we say you don't need AI for everything. It's indeterministic. There are certain things where simple automation with a couple of scripts that get you the data that you need in a consistent way, that's enough, right? You don't need to throw.
AI write those scripts for you.
You could have AI write those scripts, and then you automate it, and then you get exactly, deterministic answer at a reasonable cost factor.
Yeah, I think the next 10 years of tooling and seeing how all this stuff is incorporated, both in terms of, as you say, denoising and all that other kind of stuff, but also the AI assistance in helping you create and generate the automations or dashboards or whatever else you need to do are going to be very, very interesting, especially once we figure out how to start connecting different tools together. Obviously, whenever you're talking about connecting data sources together, you have to worry about security, data privacy, and all that kind of stuff. So once we, as a IT community, figure out the best ways to do that, to be able to leverage all the information out there in context of, if we're talking about observability, my company's platform that I'm observing, right? It's the possibilities are really tremendous. And as we've already seen in this AI world, things develop really fast. There might be a little chunk of stagnation, and then suddenly, bam, we have a tremendous leap forward, right? So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see where this all goes in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a little bit of the update that I wanted to give you. And I'm very much looking forward to all the trips that are coming up, and especially to our upcoming guests, whether it's Laura, whether it's Pini. I have a couple of other guests, some of the speakers that I met at Cloud Native Days Austria, and then a very old friend that I've known for years just reached out on LinkedIn, William Love. We will have an interesting conversation, I'm sure, as well in December. And
awesome. Well, Andi, I appreciate you being a guest on the show today. No, seriously, this is always fun to have these kind of updates. I think there's just a lot that you get to see and do. And, as you mentioned earlier, from your time at, where was it, Austria, Cloud Native Day Austria, where Ali was talking about, like, it was the right, sharing information, right? is really key, and it helps people know, not only learn, but also know what you know, and be like, oh, that guy Andy's really smart. I want to contact him for whatever, right? But really, it's just always a testament of your willingness to share, and we see it all throughout the IT industry. I mean, the whole basis of open telemetry, right, is not open telemetry, open source, right, is sharing and helping. So it's alive and well, thanks to people like you out there spreading the word. Well, thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. I hope to have you back on sometime soon.
Yeah.
And thank you to all of our listeners. Any final thoughts there, Andy? Or you're all good?
No, I think I'm all good. I'm just want to close with raise your hand and tell the people around you what you're capable of doing, what you are willing to share.
Yeah, and if you find out something cool, share it with other people, because chances are they don't know about it. And that then helps you share the knowledge, but also people will think, oh, this person's pretty in tune. I should pay attention to them, right? Or at least, your management or whatever. Yeah, both of those are fantastic ideas. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.